How's it going, my trim people? Dr. Slacking, the Slacking Doctor, back with week 3 of the PGBL as we take on Marolt and his Slovenia Slowbros. And this is the first time we've ever faced Marolt, so I don't know too much what to expect going into this one. If you haven't checked out already, our team builder should have been up yesterday. I would recommend going and checking that out. We've got a pretty interesting build this week. Huge shout out to Aquarius for mocking with me this week, kind of helping me to refine the build. But yeah, this is a weird one. This is definitely a weird one, so the team builder is well worth checking out to get a full explanation. But let's run through quickly what we do have here. So actually, we can look at my opponent's team first. I think that's more useful. He's brought the Celebi, the Tentacruel, the Tornadus Therian form, the Weavile, Beware, and Mega Charizard X. So if you look at his team, the only thing below base speed 100 is Beware, which is a fantastic wall breaker and a very big threat to my team. So he really has a lot of speed and a lot of power. The only ones that aren't necessarily like wholly offensive are these front three here. But Torn, even without offensive investment, I mean, Hurricane is such a high base power stab. It has good special attack. It still hits hard, and it can definitely be offensive. Tentacruel can be used offensively for sure, and even things like Scold can be difficult to switch into for my team especially. And Celebi with nasty plot variants or even just special attacking variants can be pretty strong too. So he doesn't really have anything on his team that's passive at all. He has a very offensive draft in general. So pretty much expected everything that he's brought here, barring I thought maybe Palisand could come, maybe over Tentacruel, maybe over Celebi, something like that. But other than that, pretty much expected everything else. So with that in mind, let's talk about the team that we've brought. We have brought a relatively Spadef Zapdos with Discharge, Toxic, Substitute, and Whirlwind. And I know that sounds utterly bizarre, right? A Zapdos with no recovery? Well, we have leftovers on here. And the idea was I could sub up on things like Palisand, potentially Celebi, maybe even Tentacruel, depending on what coverage is running. And it might not be able to break my sub. Certainly a Shadow Ball from an uninvested Palisand won't break my sub. So with the leftovers, we will get the passive recovery to be in a pretty good spot. Discharge means that Weavile is always scared to come in hard on me, because like if it gets Discharge powered, then this thing has speed control really loses a lot of viability. I actually don't think it has best matchup against my team anyway, so we might risk it, but still, the Discharge discourages it from coming in. Toxic plus Whirlwind basically means I can spread status around on his team, but also stop setup without being too passive. Zapdos is kind of setup bait for Charizard otherwise, especially if he's a sub variant. And if I was facing this team, I would bring sub Charizard because of that Discharge, you know, potentially powering, but being able to sub up to prevent the power and stuff like that. So yeah, I could really see a sub Charizard, so I felt like Whirlwind was crucial for that. I didn't want to get swept by that. But other than that, it's just an annoyance to his team. Static can stop things like Celebi's U-turn, Tentacruel's Rapid Spin, Torn's U-turn, and of course the Spadef set just helps take on Torn anyway. And it can also help maybe get a power out on Beware, which could be useful, although the speed control isn't that essential on Beware. But maybe a setup Charizard as well. We could, if we can't Whirlwind it out, maybe we can get a power on it before it kills us, something like that. So in general, Pedro is just here to be an annoyance to his team. Then we have a relatively offensive Diancie. Diancie actually goes crazy against his team. I originally had a Specs Diancie on my first build. He really struggles with the dual stab, but in the end I changed it up slightly. We're running Moonblast, Hidden Power Fire, and Earth Power. What you don't see here is that he also has a stack attacker, which I was pretty worried about. Even though I have a ton of really good priority for it, I was still concerned. It could be a threat, and it could break through my team, at least claim 1 KO. So this thing with Earth Power basically stops Stack Attacker in its tracks. With Hidden Power Fire, it stops Forretress in its tracks, and Moonblast hits just about everything else. Earth Power can hit the Tentacruel. The only real thing that we struggle with is Charizard X, but we do still hit that with Moonblast reasonably well. It is just an Earth Power too. It's just a bit disappointing that we don't have the Diamond Storm for it, which I really would have wanted, but never mind. Stealth Rocks on this thing should be pretty easy to get up, and with a lot of speed that we're running in this, we should potentially outspeed most Beware variants. He'll have to be running a lot of speed in his Beware to outspeed my Diancie, which I thought could be really crucial. We also can come in on things like Hurricane from Torn and chew that up and apply some offensive pressure that way. He obviously not knowing that we're not running Rock Stab. Then we have a special Steelium Z Lucario Max HP Modest. This thing is just designed to basically take on Weavile at all times, threaten it out with a Vacuum Wave at all times, and click Z Flash Cannon and just pick up KOs. With the combination of Aura Sphere plus Flash Cannon, it does hit his team really hard, so hopefully this thing could be a really good wall breaker for us. Then we have a Ayapapa Berry Scissor, Bullet Punch, Toxic, Defog, and U-turn. Again, just like Zapdos, no recovery, meant to come in on pretty much any hazard setter on his team, like the Palisand, like the Celebi, anything like that, to come in, defog on them, get Toxics off on, especially the Palisand, and then just U-turn out. The only thing it can't defog on is the Tentacruel, which can set up T-Spikes, but my team isn't very T-Spikes really. I have Nidoqueen to soak it up, and I only have 2 things that are even susceptible to T-Spikes, so I'm not overly worried about this thing not being able to defog on Tentacruel. Other than that, this thing is just a massive momentum grabber against his team with the U-turn in there. It can come in on the Weavile as well, click U-turn, and get me a ton of momentum back, which is really, really clutch. Then we have a Life Orb offensive Nidoqueen, very speedy, very offensive Nidoqueen with Sludge Wave, Earth Power, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam? Something like that. Basically just fully 4 attacks, fully offensive Nidoqueen designed to just rip his team to shreds. I mean, if you look at his team, he doesn't have switch-ins to Nidoqueen's coverage, so this thing can go crazy. And then last up, we have an Adamant, nearly max HP Lycanroc. Very little speed on this thing because I'm relying on a Cellrock plus Sucker Punch for the Celebi, a Cellrock for like the Tentacruel if it's running a lot of speed, a Cellrock for the Torn, a Cellrock for the Weavile, and a Cellrock for the Charizard X. I mean, if you look at those 2 forms of priority, we are running an Expert Belt in this thing. Oh my goodness, like Adamant Expert Belt priority hits everything barring the Beware. If we can remove the Beware, we can get Rocks up. This game's as good as over. Like, this thing just goes crazy. We need some chip on the Celebi too to put it in Sucker Punch range, but yeah, and maybe some on the Tentacruel as well. But otherwise, this thing, oh my goodness, insane matchup for Lupin III on its first showing here since we traded it in. So, with that in mind, our game plan is to wear down the Celebi as early as possible and to wear down the Beware as early as possible. So, I don't know what speed we've got this on. It might be running a little bit slow. So, we're just going to try. I'm trying to remember what the buttons are set to. I think we want to run it on 1.2 speed. I think that's how I ran it last week to get the right speed. So, hopefully this should be about the right speed. I messed up the audio, so unfortunately we don't have audio again, just like last week. I'm still learning how to use Citra. So we lead with the Zapdos because it immediately kind of annoys him, like I said. It prevents rocks from going up immediately if he leads with his Celebi. He doesn't want to take a big Heat Wave or even a U-turn. But also, if he's like a Scarf Celebi lead, because we are static, it stops him from U-turning and getting the momentum, because he fears the static, right? So that really helps with that. If he wanted to lead with Beware, then we could instantly just discharge and get chip off on that. There was really nothing that Zapdos didn't want to lead it off against, just to start being annoying. So we are going to sub up here. Like I said, this thing was designed just to get a sub up, get his passive recovery, and really just be really, really irritating to his team. I felt like the only thing he could really lead well against this was Weavile. And Weavile, we have some really good switch-ins too that give us offensive momentum, like Scissor and even Lucario to break. So I'm not too worried about a Weavile lead there. We go for the sub, and here we're just going to go for the Toxic. If we get this thing Toxic, then hey, why not, right? He goes for the sub, and thank goodness we prepped for this. This is exactly what I was talking about. If I just had Discharge Roost here, this would be a disaster, but because I thought that this had such a good matchup with sub against my team, it's why I thought, why I sacrificed having recovery on Pedro here just to have that phasing. Sometimes you kind of have to make those difficult choices in team building where it's like, I really want recovery on my Pokemons, but at the same time, I just auto lose to DD sub Charizard if I don't have Whirlwind, so hey, I don't want to auto lose to something. So we reveal the Whirlwind there, and we get him out, and I actually drag out the Beware, which is fine. I want chip off on this Beware desperately, so I'm hoping he might just stay in here and get greedy. Apparently I'm not. I'm going to double into my Rocky Helmet Diancie so that I can get chip. Sorry, this game was played a few days ago. I want to remember. This thing basically covered 2 things. 1, if you wanted to double back into Charizard, it gave me Stealth Rocks. And 2, if you wanted to stay in with his Beware, then it got me Rocky Helmet Chip. I just felt like that was the best way of covering both situations. If I just went for the Discharge and let him go to back into Charizard and I don't get the Paralysis, then I'm in a bit of a difficult position because suddenly that Charizard isn't going to sub again. It's going to attack, and I have to find a switch in. And I don't want to deal with that, and I don't want to deal with those 50-50s. So I felt like the switch into Diancie here covered his aggressive double, and it covered him just staying in. Now, unfortunately, Weavile is a bit of a problem for this thing, so I'm actually just going to stay in and go for my Stealth Rocks because I feel like I have such good checks in the back to his Ice Stab that he probably won't go for Ice Stab, and I'm just going to try and get my Stealth Rocks up, and we get some Rocky Helmet Chip off there, which is great, and he shows to be a weird EV spread, possibly Choice Band. It looks like it could be a low roll or not a fully invested Choice Band set, maybe some HP or something, so that's really, really nice because that to me suggests that we're going to get 3 rocks here. He probably won't want to click knockoff or anything like that into me, because he's going to fear a justified Lucario, and he's going to fear more Rocky Helmet Chip. So we're just going to get those rocks up and now pivot into Nidoqueen. Now this is actually the first of a couple of misplays that I make in this game, because I basically go into Nidoqueen here because I'm like, he's going to spin. I'm a really speedy Nidoqueen. I'm going to go to my Nidoqueen, and then I'm going to apply a buck ton of offensive pressure by just clicking Earth Power on this thing. And he's going to be forced into a really difficult situation where, yes, he's got hazards down, but I've regained the momentum in this match. I figured that he would probably go into this on the Stealth Rocks and try and spin, and so in my head, I was like, let's apply offensive pressure. Now, this was a mistake. What I should have done is I should have gone straight into Zapdos, because Zapdos was more likely to chew a Scald if this thing went for Scald. It was a safer mid-ground. It also potentially could static paralyze this thing if he went for the Rapid Spin, which would potentially prevent him or discourage him from spinning later in the game. And it could still potentially apply offensive pressure. Now, my concern with that was that I didn't want to let the Charizard back in. Now that I've revealed that I'm Whirlwind on Zapdos, I am kind of nervous about that Charizard. So instead, I decided to go Nidoqueen. But what this doesn't cover is if he just raw Scalds here, or if he's a speedy version of Tentacruel. Either of those are problematic. Now, if he is an offensive Tentacruel, I might be able to OHKO with his Earth Power. So there's that. But yeah, this was definitely a little bit of a loose play, I feel, looking back at it. Because as we see here, he does spin, which is fine, but he does then outspeed me and fire off the Scald. And that puts me in a bit of a tricky situation, because that Scald is going to 2-hit KO my offensive Nidoqueen. And my Earth Power doesn't quite pick up the KO here, so no idea if that was a damage roll or whatever. I don't know his investment as he gets his Black Sludge recovery, but now I'm forced to either let my Nidoqueen go down or take more damage on something else, and I now know that he's probably going to outspeed a lot of my team because he outspeeds my Nidoqueen, and I'm running similar speed creeps in a lot of my mons, so yeah, that's not an ideal situation. I'm just going to pivot into Zapdos here because I don't want to let Nidoqueen go down. It can still be useful sack fodder on something more scary than this, potentially, and it can still be useful to revenge kill something like the Beware, which still is likely to be slower than me. So I need to make sure I keep special breakers around for that Beware, because it might be that I can't get the job done with Lycanroc, even though that's my win con in this game. And as you can see here, we chew up that Ice Beam, but I make a second misplay going for the Toxic here. I really didn't feel like he would stay in and just give me his Tentacruel, even though he's packing the Ice Beam there. His Scald did so little to me. I calced it and I was like, alright, an Ice Beam's not even going to two-shot me from this range, so there's no way he just fires off an Ice Beam or a Sludge Wave or anything like that. He needs to go into the into the Charizard, which will chew on a Discharge or a Thunderbolt. In which case, I want that Charizard Toxic. I don't want that Charizard coming in for free. I don't want that Charizard subbing up or forcing mind games or taking my Zapdos from me. I just want that thing Toxic. So that's why I make the aggressive play there. But he does choose to stay in an Ice Beam. I'm guessing he just wanted damage off on this thing because he sees it as being an annoyance. Or maybe he predicted me to go for the read and go for the Toxic. But that, again, puts me in a bit of a bad situation because I do take a lot of chip off in the Zapdos. Now, this isn't as bad a play as my Nidoqueen play was because Zapdos is non-essential this matchup. It's just here to be aggravating, and it's certainly doing that. I'm not going to over-predict this time. I'm just going to go for the Discharge. I thought that this was a potential thing if he wanted to try and predict me to go for a Toxic again. He might try and go with the Weavile. So I was like, alright, well, let's just Discharge. We can always paralyze the Charizard, maybe. We can get a lot of chip off on this Weavile, which is potentially going to put it in range of 2 Rock switches later in the game, which could be huge. This thing now being below 50% means that if I get Rocks up, this thing can only revenge kill once, which is massive. So, and it gets me into my Lucario, which I don't mind, because like I said, Lucario is a pretty good breaker against this team, and I had a look at this, and I was like, okay, this Icicle Crash doesn't do too much, because we are max HP, so we take that relatively well, and I'm just going to fire off my Z. I could have Vacuum Waved here, but I didn't feel like he was ever going to low kick or anything. As I said, it looked as though he was probably choice banned. I couldn't really figure out what else his item was. So I'm just going to fire off the Steelium Z here and pretty much guarantee a KO. If he goes into Charizard, Charizard will take this. But I doubt he's going to go into Charizard on a potential fighting type move. If anything, he's going to go into the Celebi or the Tornadus. And as I already said, I want chip on Celebi for my Lycanroc. So I was really hoping he would go into Celebi here. He doesn't, but we get his Tentacruel, which basically means that he can't get Rocks up again. That's not a bad thing because this thing probably didn't outspeed his Tentacruel. So just removing the Tentacruel on the switch in. If I hadn't gone for the Z, we might not have killed it there. That's no bad thing. One thing I forgot to say earlier in this game is because he led Celebi and he didn't go for Rocks, he didn't go for anything, he didn't U-turn, I think his Celebi might be Scarf. I'm looking at his team and I'm like, okay, Celebi could be Rocks, but I think it might be Scarf. And I think it could even be Scarf Rocks. So with that in mind, I'm going to try and play this game with potential Scarf Celebi in the back of my head. He doesn't need a Scarf against my team because his build or his draft is so fast, but the way he led off with it, the way he preserved it instantly, I'm like, maybe it's Scarf. So I'm keeping that in mind at all times during this game, and that's why I would have loved chip on it there to put it into Sucker Punch range, because if it is Scarf, he probably isn't going to be able to stall out my Sucker Punches, which is going to be amazing. So Here this comes in. It can't actually KO me if it's Scarf Psychic, but it could potentially with Earth Power. So I'm going to go into Nidoqueen and sack it here, because basically if I went into the Zapdos on the Earth Power, sure, I would have got a lot of offensive momentum. But Zapdos actually could let the Charizard back in for free, and that really, really scares me. Like I said, I don't really want to mess around with that Charizard. Toxicking a Celebi isn't the best thing in the world, and because I don't have Roost, he could just stay in, and if he isn't Scarf, start clicking Psychic on my Toxic, and potentially 1v1 my Zapdos with this Celebi. So that didn't seem like a worthwhile play. So the reason I went to Nidoqueen is because whether he clicked Psychic or Earth Power, we got to see what it was that he wanted to hit my Lucario with, and we got to guarantee get the Scissor in for free, and I felt like that was so much more useful positioning-wise than getting in the Zapdos. Like I said, otherwise we're just letting the Charizard in, we're potentially just throwing out a Zapdos if he isn't Scarf, just doesn't seem worth it at all. This way we get a big U-turn off, and he does reveal the Beware, and I'm like, yes, because we want a chip on this thing. If you can call that chip. What? That is nothing. This Beware takes 0 from that U-turn, revealing that he is at least max HP. At least max HP. But I'm back into my Lucario, and he no longer has a Steel Resist that isn't Charizard. That isn't going to take massive damage from a fighting move. This thing being weak to fighting means that this Flash Cannon essentially free, so I am just going to Flash Cannon here. I don't think he would ever give me Beware, but if he wanted to give me 50% on Beware, I would take 50% on Beware gladly, because that hugely helps my Lycanroc late game. So I felt like he was always going to switch into either one of his fighting resists, and getting a Flash Cannon off on either of those was nice. I was hoping it'd be the Celebi, but unfortunately it was the Tornadus. Gets me back into Diancie. Unfortunately, he does go for the U-turn, which is a very good play. Keeps gets the momentum back in his favor, but my Rocky Helmet does cover that play a little bit too, because this thing is now going to be really low. Even with regen, it's going to be around a 50% mark, meaning that especially if I get rocks up, it's going to be in range of that SL Rock, and that's something that we really, really want to see. So I am going to preserve this Diancie. Rocky Helmet is still potentially really useful for Beware. Like I say, I want to chip down that Beware. I do have Fire Fang on the Lycanroc. That's my best way of hitting it, so I want to try and wear it down to get a Fire Fang off on it later. And we're going to get Zapdos in here as he goes for the Stealth Rocks. I really thought this would either be a U-turn or a Grass move, so he does definitely get me here with the Stealth Rocks. And now I'm like, oh, okay, I can't really touch this thing too well. His Charizard, he knows, walls me, so I'm just going to go for the Toxic, because if he is Scarfed, and he's Scarfed into Stealth Rock, he's going to switch out now. And if he's not Scarfed, he's going to reveal he's not Scarfed now, and we're going to get that really valuable information. So he does decide to switch out straight into the Charizard. We finally get the Toxic off on this thing, which is, that's all I wanted. That's all I needed, was to get this thing Toxic. So I am super, super happy now. Zapdos has 100% done its job here. And it's looking more and more likely that Celebi is Scarfed, which means that if I can get it locked into something offensive, I don't need to worry about it potentially like subbing up on a Sucker Punch from Lycanroc. So that's really, really huge as well. Here I'm just going to Whirlwind, so that if he tries to DD or sub, we can Whirlwind him out as he actually reveals the Toxic. So this thing was a sub-Toxic set. Like I said, I did see sub-Toxic Tornadus in mocks, so I wasn't wholly surprised to see that. It's a good way of wearing down like Diancie and stuff. So it looks as though he's probably sub-Toxic Roost Flare Blitz, meaning he's probably walled by Diancie, so that's really valuable information. We weld him out into this Weavile, and at this point I am happy to sack Zapdos. I'm happy for Pedro to go down. He's done his job. The Charizard is poisoned. The Tentacruel is gone. So yeah, I really feel like this thing has done everything that I need it to do. I can go into Scissor here, and again, I can get the momentum. I can click U-turn. He either has to give me this Weavile, or he has to give me chip off on the, hopefully, the Beware, or he has to basically sack something to me. He decides to go into Zapdos. I can U-turn here. Into Zapdos, going to Charizard X, sorry. I can U-turn here. Getting more chip off on this thing is going to take poison damage, and now, as I said, I know pretty much that I am almost certain his last move is Roost. It's likely. It could be Earthquake, but I'll take an Earthquake from this thing anyway. And I can potentially just get my Stealth Rocks up here. If he chooses to sack his Charizard just to Flare Blitz me and take poison damage plus Rocky Helmet recoil, I don't care. He actually goes for the Toxic and we dodge, meaning that we get our Stealth Rocks up. That dodge depends on his set. That dodge could be huge, because if he's going to Earthquake the next turn, then that is pretty huge. But assuming that he doesn't have Earthquake, otherwise he would have just clicked it there. That dodge isn't too consequential, because it basically is just one extra turn of Toxic damage. I would always have just Moonblasted here, / he would have had to Flare Blitz into Rocky Helmet Chip and all that good stuff, or potentially try and roost up. Maybe I would have taken an extra turn of poison, but yeah, it's maybe at most 2 extra turns of poison, but eventually this offensive, I think modest Moonblast would have picked up the KO pretty quickly. So it's not the end of the world, and we do get our Stealth Rocks up, and that is huge. Like I said, bringing in that Scissor there, sacking our Zapdos to bring the Scissor in to get our Stealth Rocks up means that our Weavile's in a difficult position, the Beware's taking chip, and the Celebi is taking chip. So those Stealth Rocks are huge now that that Tentacruel has gone down. They don't bother me nearly as much being up on my side, so we're in a really good position. I'm going to pivot into Scissor here because he's likely to go for a Leaf Storm, but it does covers him going for a Psychic on an aggressive play. And yeah, Scissor really is just here to come in every time on this Celebi and click U-turn. This thing is just only clicking one move every time it comes in, but it's doing it brilliantly, so I can't complain. He has to go into the Beware now, which means he has to take Stealth Rocks, means he has to take U-turn. I know it's minuscule chip, but it all adds up. Eventually, all of these 1-2% all just slowly put it in range of my special attackers, so it all matters. Here we're going to go out into Lucario, potentially just KO this thing with an Aura Sphere. He no longer really has switch-ins to me. I think I actually go for the Flash Cannon because, again, I don't think he's just going to throw this thing away when I have a Lycanroc in the back that destroys the rest of his team. So I think I make the aggressive play in Flash Cannon because even if he stays in with Beware, right, I still get like 50% off on Beware potentially. So it's really a win-win situation for me by clicking Flash Cannon there. Here I'm going to stay in because he revealed Psychic earlier, and if he is like just Scarf Timid Psychic, which it looks like he is, he won't KO me, and I don't think he has the Earth Power from the fact he's revealed Stealth Rocks, Leaf Storm, and Psychic now. I think it's probably U-turn. So we stay in and just Flash Cannon. I can still switch in on rocks after that damage, guaranteed. So I knew that that was just a way of me getting rid of the Celebi, and now at this point, Lycanroc will just win if I can kill the Beware. That's all I need. It is pretty much just Beware versus my team. So with the Torn coming in here, I'm actually going to pivot out into Scissor. This is just on a sack to get Diancie in, essentially. If I can get Diancie in, it should just win from this position. But he actually reveals to be a Rain Dance Tauntee. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to deal with that. It's not a Z Rain Dance, so it doesn't get a speed boost. Not that that would matter, but I'm like, I don't think that's a problem. I think I can handle that okay. So I'm just going to U-turn. If he kills me, he can't Heat Wave because he's just set up Rain. I actually Bullet Punch, sorry, to try and just pick up the KO. If he tried to Heat Wave in the Rain, it wouldn't really matter. The one thing that's annoying about this Rain is that I can't Fire Fang with my Lycanroc. So instead, I'm just going to go for the Toxic here with Scissor onto the Beware because I feel like, look, Scissor served its purpose. I don't need Scissor anymore. It doesn't do too much. I can win this game with a Cell Rock right now. That Torn in the back, not a threat, not a problem. This is the only problem. Let's get this thing on a timer as he reveals the Drain Punch, and we'll be in a good spot. And that Drain Punch, I didn't even think about. When I saw he was max HP, I still assumed he was going to be Superpower. My Berry pops, which means he just has more HP to Drain Punch off me, and I'm like, no, this is disaster. He's now back at full, and I'm like, all that chip, the Stealth Rocks, the U-turns, the Poison, all for naught because he's Drain Punch, and I have this massive Berry that he's going to be able to get off me, get health off me, so I have to just keep Bullet Punching him. It's doing nothing, but I can't Drain Punch into anything. If I Drain Punch into the Diancie, he can potentially just pivot out. Yes, I will get Rocky Helmet Chip, but the Drain Punch does way too much for the Rocky Helmet Chip plus Poison Chip to be valuable. So I basically have to stay in with Scissor, force a kind of KO situation by revenge killing this thing, and just lose my Scissor. That's the only option I have available to me. So I just have to keep spamming Bullet Punch and get this thing as low as I can. It's not great. It's really not great. But what else can I do? This thing turned out to be very, very defensive. Like, it had a ton of defensive investment, a max HP. Yeah, this thing was bulky as all hell. And I'm looking at my calcs, and I'm like, okay, looking at it, you know, he could be like a max physical defense set, maybe, I don't know. He could be like some attack, some physical defense, and HP. Either way, I don't think he's got any special bulk. So I'm just going to go into Diancie here. Moonblast almost certainly kills this thing. You'd have to have a ton of Spadef to take Moonblast from here. Plus, with the Rocky Helmet Chip and stuff, he shouldn't be Drain Punching too much back. Poison racking up turn by turn that he stays in. We should be fine. And also, Moonblast hit Tornadus harder than my Flash Cannon. Even though my Lucario had a higher special attack stat, the base power of Moonblast basically meant that it hit this thing better. However, maybe I could have picked up a KO with Vacuum Wave on this thing. I don't think so. Looking at how much that Moonblast did, I don't think that Flash Cannon to Vacuum Wave would have killed Lucario anyway. So I basically just felt like this was my better play, to use Diancie in this way. And just to fire off the Moonblast I knew that if this thing was a Rain Dance, it probably wasn't Iron Tail. Having seen at least 2 moves on it, I was starting to feel like I don't think this thing has Iron Tail. So we are able to just pick up the KO with Diancie as he goes out into the Lucario. Now, here is where I make... I don't want to stop. I want to pause. Pause here. Here is where I make another big misplay. Huge misplay. Huge misplay. Because this Diancie can come back in on Stealth Rocks. And I think it can take another turn of Poison after Stealth Rocks. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Some of you will be better at maths than me. But I think it can take another turn of Poison after Stealth Rocks. So, my play here always is to sack Lucario. If I sack Lucario here, I go into Lycanroc and I click a Cell Rock. Even if he Ice Shards, he can't kill my Lycanroc with Ice Shard. That's why I don't sack Lycanroc to go into Lucario, because he could potentially pick off my Lucario with an Ice Shard, and I don't want to run that risk. He could out-prioritize me. So I always sack Lucario here, go into Lycanroc, click a Cell Rock. If he switches Weavile out to preserve it, to go into his Beware, Weavile is dead to rocks upon re-entry. So the Weavile's gone forever. The Weavile's not to be worried about. If he then goes into Beware, as I said on my Cell Rock, he takes Rocks damage, takes Poison damage, he takes a Cell Rock damage. Then I Fire Fang him, and he gets relatively low. Sure, he Drain Punches it all back from my Lycanroc, and he probably gets back up to close to full, potentially. But my Diancie comes into Revenge Kill, and my Diancie's Moonblast actually hits that thing harder than my Lycanroc's Flash Cannon. They are roughly the same speed stat. Lycanroc actually is a little bit faster. But from the damage spreads that I've seen, I don't think there's any way his Beware should be able to outspeed my Diancie anyway. So I think that is always my play. If he chooses to go into Weavile to sack the Weavile to then go back into Beware, I shouldn't die to Poison damage, like I said. So I would end up winning this game narrowly 1-0, I think. However, I basically just think, well, I'm too concerned that the Beware could outspeed my Diancie. I don't think from the investment it does, but I'm paranoid. What if I've calced wrong? You know, it's not an exact art on Wi-Fi judging the damage calcs on the HP bar. I don't know the exact percentages, so I'm just like, you know what? I know Lucario outspeeds all Beware variants, and I know that Aura Sphere is going to hit Beware really hard. So let me just play it safe and rely on my speed to get me over the line here, rather than going for my more damaging stab with a Moonblast that would have a higher damage output on Beware. So I leave this thing in, I die to Icicle Crash here, and we still force the same scenario that we forced if we had sacked Lycanroc. It's just we don't have the Diancie to Revenge Kill the Beware. If we sacked the Lucario, sorry. It's just we don't have Diancie to Revenge Kill the Beware now. We have Lucario to Revenge Kill the Beware, which is faster but slightly weaker. So you see the trade-off here that I had, and I valued speed over damage output a little bit. With Fire After Cell Rock, as it reveals, he doesn't have Ice Shard. I wish in that scenario I could have gone for like Fire Fang or something and taken some damage on my Lycanroc to give him less recovery with Drain Punch, but I can't. I also wish that Lupin the Third here wasn't max HP pretty much, but it is. So that means that that Fire Fang is doing nothing, and his Drain Punch is recovering quite a chunk. Now, luckily, Lupin Third has very low base HP. Lycanroc does not a good HP stat, so he doesn't get too much back. But obviously, if we had like no HP investment, he would have got like half of that back. So it's all coming down to damage rolls at the minute, the way that things are shaping up. We do get some Poison Chip after his leftovers, at least cancelling that out, and he's up there at about 80%. So we go out into the Lucario, and this is where I'm saying at this point, running the calcs, I'm like, if this thing is just max HP, like max defense, we should always KO this thing. Shouldn't even be a damage roll. However, if he is a somewhat special defense invested, it could be any number of damage rolls all the way up to impossible. This might not even kill ever, depending on, you know, his nature and all sorts. So just as I was concerned about me miscalculating and him having more speed than I thought, now I'm concerned because I'm like, what if I've miscalculated and he has more Spadef than I thought? And it was really just a judgment call here of, did I think he was more likely to run Spadef, or did I think he was more likely to run Speed? And me not knowing in the moment with Diancie whether it could live rocks plus poison damage if he chooses to sack the Weavile and stuff. So, yeah, it really just came down to a judgment call on my part, whether I thought what investment he'd be running, and whether I thought I could live Rocks and Poison, which I didn't even do the maths on in the end. I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to put my faith in Lucario. So we click Aura Sphere here. If I had Focus Blast, then it would have been down to land in a Focus Blast potentially. And we watched that HP drop all the way, and I checked for a crit, and we see no crit, and we do pick up the narrowest of 1-0 wins. Now, I spoke to Marolt after the game about his Beware, and he did have some Spadef investment, so we looked it up knowing our 2 sets, and we ran the calcs, and that was pretty much exactly a 50-50 damage roll. If I had brought in my Diancie, it would have outsped, and I think Diancie would have had an 80-20 damage roll or something like that. So 100%, like, if the Diancie was able to live Stealth Rocks and Poison, I should have kept the Diancie endgame. That was better. But we get away with it. We get the 50-50 coin flip, and yeah, we managed to pull this off. Like I said, there were a few plays that I felt were loose, but in the most part, like, I felt we really were in the driving seat in this game. I felt like we played really, really well. It was just that damn Beware. Like, Marolt knew what he was doing and just wouldn't give me his defensive Beware because he knew that Lycanroc ripped him apart otherwise. And no matter how hard I tried, like, I couldn't bait that thing out any better than I did. And my bloody Eye of Papa Berry on Scissor stopped me from getting it even lower. And it was just like this catalogue of irritating situations that meant I couldn't break that Beware. But we got there in the end, and kudos to him for keeping it around, preserving it so well. And it literally came down to a damage roll. So it shows you any number of other damage rolls during that game could have changed that too. But yeah, we got it in the end. We got there in the end. We got over the line after an impressive 6-0 win last week to get a narrow 1-0 win this week on a 50-50 damage roll. But we take those. We take those and we move on. Next week we are taking on Randy, HRD Productions, one of my favourite Draft League content creators, someone who I have been wanting to battle for an incredibly long time, and one of the people I was most hyped to battle when I joined the PGBL. So definitely check back for that next week. I know I can't wait, and I hope you guys are excited as well. GG to Marolt. We will kick on, and hopefully he will too. Hopefully be able to pick himself up after this. I know he's had a tough start this season. Thank you so much for loafing around with me, guys, and I'll catch you again next time.